Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of the Big at the Back podcast. And what a time to be alive. There's football on almost every single day. FPL's up and running. We've got the World Cup coming up. What's there to be negative about? Matt, how are you?
I'll tell you what's there to be negative about. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning to watch England play Ireland in the T20 World Cup, and we lost. So that's what there is to be negative about. And there was rain delay, so I got up at 5, and it didn't properly start until about 5:45. So what a waste of everyone's time this morning has been. I'm happy to bring some negativity to this podcast. Although, if we stick to the topic of football, surely you're the one to have negativity this week when it comes to your team's results.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that quite heavily. You know what? Let's just dive in and let's rip the Band-Aid off because I want to get that out of the way as soon as possible.
Then you can enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Exactly. We'll speak about our teams and how we're doing in FPL, but let's just dive in and rip the Band-Aid off with Liverpool because I watched this game. I don't know if you got the chance to watch it live as well.
Yep.
So my opinion on this was Liverpool just looks completely flat and knackered. Obviously, I don't want to use the injury excuse, but most of the squad has been injured at one point this season, and it feels like we've just never got going. And the team just looked completely flat. No creativity whatsoever. And when Trent came on, we actually started creating chances, which is telling. But absolutely, Curtis Jones, I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, should never, ever, ever be playing for Liverpool. He is terrible. But I just think we looked flat and we didn't really... Van Dijk should have put a few away, so we probably should have won. But I just thought we were completely abject and we probably didn't deserve to get anything from the match, if we're honest.
Yeah, I think Van Dijk could have had a hat-trick on another day. I did see someone, I think it was in one of my friends' leagues, they'd said captained Van Dijk, which is a bold shout, but on another day, like I say, he could have had 2 or 3, and that would have been a master stroke that would have come off. So it's those fine lines in which FPL is balanced. But I agree with you, really. You were flat. Henderson made a couple of good saves. You can say the one from Van Dijk where he had the free header about 6 yards out. It was a good save, but Van Dijk shouldn't be giving the keeper a chance in that situation. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a little bit flat. And Forest changed the way they played a little bit. Cooper switched from his sort of back 5 to more of a standard back 4 and have 3 defensive midfielders in that 11, which just goes to show that pack that midfield out, especially with Liverpool have been struggling in the midfield lately with injuries and things like that. Like you say, Curtis Jones, who I don't think is as bad as you think, but I don't think he's a Liverpool quality player. So I think he'd happily settle into a mid-table side and do well for them. But he's when you've had the likes of the central midfielders that Liverpool have had in the last few years and over the years, he's never going to match up to those. So, and then it was just a set piece that wasn't really dealt with, and only obviously hit the post in the first instance and then tucked the rebound home. So. And you never really looked like, even though you had a couple of good chances, you just always felt like it was going to be one of those days that Forest were going to hold out. So, I mean, credit to them, but how do they feel? You go and beat Liverpool and you're still bottom of the league at the end of the weekend.
I mean, I think Nottingham Forest have decided that they've got to play defensively, otherwise they're just going to get spanked every single week. So they've shifted on that basis. And it's the frustrating thing is it shouldn't have worked against Liverpool, but Liverpool just are in one of those phases and had one of those days, unfortunately. So, yeah, very, very painful result. And the team were just, after putting in that heroic performance against Man City, after midweek absolutely working their socks off and eventually getting the winner against West Ham, they just looked dead on their feet. They looked completely exhausted. Obviously, we've got Ajax tonight as well, as we're recording on Wednesday, and then we're playing again on Saturday. Or is it Saturday? Is it
Saturday night at 7 o'clock or 7:30? I think it's been moved because obviously it's one of those ones where I think it would usually be the Sunday kickoff, but I think you play next Tuesday in the Champions League, so Sky have brought it forward to Saturday night.
But that next fixture is Leeds at home. And while they work their socks off, Leeds look absolutely terrible at the moment. So even though we shouldn't be discussing captaincy anymore because it's done, there is an argument to captain a Liverpool player. I'm not sure it's going to be Salah, but if you've got Trent, for example, and he doesn't play in the Champions League tonight, that could be a good idea. It may even be worth looking at bringing Van Dijk in. Are you looking at any Liverpool players in terms of bringing in? Have you got any? What's your status with them at the moment?
So I've got Salah at the moment because I took KDB out for that blank week and I brought back in Foden, so that freed me up the money to go to Salah. I think previously I had McAllister in that role. So KDB and McAllister became Foden and Salah. Yeah, like at the moment I'm going to hold because, like you say, Leeds are very, very ropey at the moment. I am honestly surprised that as we record this, Jesse Marsch is still in charge because I was expecting him to get the chop after the weekend's games. It could be the final nail in their coffin, or it could be exactly what they need at the moment. So, yeah, I'm sticking with Salah for now. It's pointless dropping him ahead of this game. I think if you're ever going to drop him, it will probably be ahead of the Spurs game. But then again, the way Spurs are playing at the moment, I just don't know. It feels like one of those situations, this league in general, at the moment, you just don't know what's going to happen on any given day.
Yeah, totally agree. I think with Liverpool assets, they're a hold for Leeds. So I've got Salah and Robertson, who I brought back in from game week 12. I'll probably be holding both of them for this week. I think I don't hate the idea of getting Van Dijk in. I mean, Van Dijk bullet header versus Leeds, like something like that's going to happen at some point, right? That's written on the wall, right?
I feel like you're clutching at straws here.
Maybe. I think for it. I'm not sure I would do it myself, but I think there is an argument for someone that is.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think it's not impossible, obviously. But if that's what you're basing your transfers on, then you're not bringing him in for that, are you? Let's be honest.
If you were on a wild card right now, would you have any Liverpool players?
Probably not.
Same. I think with Liverpool players, if you've got them, you're holding them for this fixture. But if you're on a wild card, you're not having any Liverpool players in your team at the moment. If we're looking at the fixtures, they've got Leeds at home this week, then Tottenham away, and then admittedly it's Southampton at home. So actually, two very good home games for them. Maybe I will have Salah. Maybe I will hold Salah for the duration. It's a bit up in the air, but I think there's two very good home games and a Tottenham who look out of sorts at the moment.
Yeah, so it's really tricky. I think the thing with you guys, and you sing his praise all the time, is Jota missing is a big loss for you. And also then you throw in Diaz missing out as well for injury. It just feels like you're missing that spark, even with Salah playing through the centre as he did on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Jota is the most underrated player in the league, in my opinion. He just makes Liverpool so much better. And people are talking about how we've been missing Sadio Mane. We haven't. We've been missing Diogo Jota this season. And the one game he came back was against, 2 games he was back for, was we absolutely spanked Rangers and we beat Man City. And then he's injured again. So he is such a huge, huge, huge miss for us. Really struggling. I think with Liverpool, it's get at least 2 wins from the next 3 and then just get into the World Cup and regroup and sort the squad out because it's a bit of a shambles at the moment. Looking at there's not really anything to say for Nottingham Forest. Is there? Arsenal away next, like you're not bringing any of them in for that. Then it's Brentford and Crystal Palace both at home, both of who are out of sorts, but you're not bringing any Forest players in, right?
No, I don't think so, let's be honest. The only one you'd even remotely consider would probably be El Nui because he has hit a little bit of form, scored a couple of goals, but there are so many better options out there in those striking positions. So I think unless you're a Forest fan, you probably haven't got any Forest players.
Yeah, totally agree.
Although, if you were wildcarding, could you make an argument for Dean Henderson at any point?
No, I don't think that. I think their defence is still shocking. And just because they're playing more defensively, if Liverpool had switched it on or had the players available at any point, we probably would have ripped them apart on any other day. 99 times out of 100, Liverpool versus Forest, we ripped them to shreds. I don't think they were all that good.
No, I agree. Just throwing it out there. Devil's advocate and all that.
Man City 3, Brighton 1. Ederson, what a moron. He got the assist, but leave it to Ederson just to let a really easy chance in at the near post. And for everyone except me apparently has Cancelo, so it was great for me this week, but really frustrating for any City defence owners.
To be fair though, wasn't it Cancelo for Robertson?
Yes, but
so like, let's be honest, what's the difference? But no, like, yeah, when I first saw that guy, I thought it must have taken a deflection, but nope, just went straight through, and his hand was like just underneath the ball. Like, I had no idea what happened there. But again, it was the two main men, Haaland and De Bruyne with the goals, Bernardo picking up a couple of assists as well, and big win for City as well, especially seeing as Southampton got a point off Arsenal, so they closed that gap at the top. But Haaland, what's that now? Is it 16 league goals for the season? 17? So he's just scary. I mean, it just feels redundant talking about it at this point, because there's only so many superlatives that you can use.
The captaincy is done. That conversation is over. Just like last season with Salah, this season it's Haaland. That's it. And to be honest, I'm fine with that. It doesn't make the game worse, in my opinion. I think you've got a friend of mine said to me, you've got FPL casuals that are trying to be differential with their captain. No, just stick it on Haaland. And as long as he's fit and firing, I don't see why you'd look at anyone else for the captaincy. As far as I'm concerned, that conversation is over until Haaland's injured or he seriously goes out of form.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he came off last night at half-time in the Champions League game at Dortmund, and so did Cancelo, actually. Pep said they both had a bit of a fever, so they just rested them for that. So sounds as though they're both going to be fit and ready for the weekend.
Phil Foden played 90 yesterday.
Yeah, after being on the bench, and they do play in that early game on Saturday. So never captain the early kickoff, did someone say?
Yeah, but Haaland. Don't overthink this, Haaland.
No way. Yeah, it's an absolute banker, isn't it? Although if he is ill, this is the week where you do have to think about your vice captaincy potentially.
I mean, sorry, Salah's still an FPL god, so vice captain should be on Salah if you've got him. I think that with Foden, there's a real risk of him not starting at the weekend.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, but then again, he didn't start last weekend, so it's annoying because obviously this week I brought Foden in, so typical that he gets benched and doesn't have time to do anything really when he comes on. So, but I mean, you look at their run of fixtures as well. Their next 5 games. I know we're talking past the World Cup here.
No, next 3 is all we talk about. But
Leicester, Fulham, and Brentford, and 2 of those are at home, and they're Fulham and Brentford at home. Like, Haaland could get 6 goals across these 3 games easily. So, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Completely
disgusting.
I mean, Leicester away, arguably quite tricky because they're on a bit of form at the moment, and we'll speak about them next, actually. But Fulham and Brentford at home. Brentford suck away as well. I think you need 3 City for that run-in, and my transfers are revolving around getting 3 City in. Let's discuss... well, actually, we can go to Brentford or Leicester, but I'd rather go to Fulham because they obviously won 3-2 against a very, very, very poor Leeds side. Now, Leeds attack, but Mitro and Andreas. Matt, as a man that had Andreas on the bench, just like many of the community, talk to me about your feelings.
I don't. It's not so much the fact that I had him on the bench that hurts, because obviously that does hurt. But he was my first sub, and Ben Davies didn't start, but then got brought on in the 81st minute for a 1-pointer, and that 9-point difference is the difference between a bang average week and a half decent week. So fuck you, Antonio Conte. That's all I've got to say about you. I hope you get sacked because you've turned Spurs into an absolute shambles of a trying to play defensive side, and you got exactly what you deserved at the weekend. But yeah, fair play to Andreas Pereira. They looked really good in this game, to be honest with you. They were all over him going forwards. They had a lot of chances. Leeds' defence left a lot to be desired as well. Willian is rolling back the years a little bit. He's put in a couple of impressive performances. Not that anyone is going to be rushing to bring him in, I don't think, but he had a good game. And Mitro again stepping up with a goal. So he still manages to be a bargain despite the fact his price keeps rising.
Yeah, Mitro is the clear second or third striking option at the moment. I think you've obviously got Haaland, then you've probably got Kane as well. Then you've got the choice between Mitro and Tony and Wilson, but I think Mitro is the one to go for. Just because he's on penalties and Fulham do win games 1-0, so he racks up bonus points as well. But Andreas, I know he's 4.5, but I can't see a scenario, well, except for when they play like City. But while they're playing other teams around them, Andreas is going to be starting every week for me. He's starting this week and they play Everton.
Yeah, I'm right on the edge. Like, he's currently still sat in my first sub spot. It's just, I feel like I need to get him in, but I don't know who for. But as I said to you beforehand as well, Everton have currently got one of the best defensive records in the league. That Cody-Tarkowski partnership at centre-half seems to be working wonders for them. So
it was really good,
maybe this is the week to leave him on the bench. But like, I'll just get punished again, I'm sure, if I do.
Yeah, I think you will. Andreas is really, really good. Moving on to Everton then, because a few weeks ago we were talking about Iwobi becoming a good FPL asset, and he's continuing to deliver. So talk to me about your love for Iwobi, who got 2 assists.
I stand by my point previously in that I don't think it's sustainable. Obviously, he's finding some form at the moment. I just feel like anytime now, if I bring him in, I feel like I've already missed the boat because like we had with Trossard, I know he scored at the weekend, but it was, let's be honest, a bit of bad goalkeeping. He was out of the game. I know it was City, but even before that, they drew with Forest in the week. So, like, really, and Palace are in like a bit of dire straits at the moment, losing 3-0 at the weekend. Was it a draw with Wolves in midweek? So, like, they aren't pulling up trees. Yeah. If you get him in now, I feel like you've missed the boat. Obviously, he's got ability. He was at Arsenal for quite a long time, and Arsenal don't just sign rubbish players and bring them through their academy. I feel like it's too little, too late for me to bring him in now, especially if you look at their fixtures now. Like, you've got 3 decent fixtures here. This is like prime troll territory if I bring him in now, because he'll blank against Fulham, blank against Leicester, and blank against Bournemouth. You wait and see.
Yeah, he'll become the new Wilf Zaha, won't he?
God.
I mean, talk to me about Palace then, because I'm invested in their defence, but I'm looking at probably getting out, if not this week, then next week, just on the basis that even though they've had a really nice run of fixtures, they've somehow become rubbish. And Zaha's done his thing of everyone brings him in, then he stops performing. And I'd absolutely love to see it. I wasn't one of the ones that brought him in. Knowing your history with him, I assume you were.
No, for once, I've managed to avoid debate. I very nearly did. I actually had him in, and then I was like, no, why am I doing this? And I changed it to Anthony, who hasn't done much better since. But I have got...
Small win.
Yeah, exactly. At least it's not Zaha again. I have got Mitchell, but he's just warming my bench at the moment. I don't see that changing anytime soon until he'll probably just sit there until the World Cup, let's be honest, and then you get those transfers anyway. I have also got Odsonne Edouard in there still, who has picked up a goal in the last few weeks. And since I've got him in, he's had a goal and an assist in 4 games. So not terrible, not brilliant. Again, with their fixtures at the moment, I'll probably keep him in because they've got Southampton, West Ham and Forest before we break for the World Cup. So they're not horrendous fixtures. They're not great, but I feel like there's other areas of my team that need patching up more urgently. Unless I was to drop Salah to bring in Kane, Odd would obviously be the one that would make the fall there, but I don't see myself doing that in these 3 games either, to be honest with you. I think the risk now, and not many people will say it, especially not the players, is a lot of players have got the World Cups in their mind. Yeah. And are they going to be going, especially in that last game before the break? And we've got the League Cup 3rd round still to play, which I'm assuming is just going to be the kids for pretty much every team. Like, none of their players that are going to the World Cup are going to be playing in those games. If you're playing in Europe, you've still got 6 games between now and the World Cup.
Mad, isn't it? On Edouard, before we go into that, do you think you were trying to be a bit too cute, trying to be a bit too clever with bringing Edouard in, where you should have just kept it simple and gone Kane, Mitro, and Haaland?
Probably, but at that point I had KDB, so it would have been too expensive, and KDB was playing well when City were flying. So it's just one of those. It's like fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Game to talk about that I want to cover is, well, we could talk about Leicester and their return to form, but the fixtures are horrible for them in the next three. Man City at home, then away to Everton, away to West Ham. You're not going near anyone from Leicester. So I almost want to just breeze over them. But a team that have got good fixtures are Manchester United. So you've got Anthony. He's not really done much for you. But West Ham at home, really easy game. Then Aston Villa away, who have got a caretaker manager, and Fulham away. So I think Manchester United, if you're trying to be cheeky, it's worth looking at Rashford.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, by the time United play Villa, they will have their new manager in charge. Emery takes charge on the 1st of November, and that will be his first game. So that's not necessarily an easy game. The West Ham game this weekend, and I feel like Rashford in general has a fairly decent record against West Ham. So maybe that one. What was the third fixture you said? Fulham. So yeah, it's not a bad shout. I mean, I'm not going to be doubling up on United, obviously having Anthony, but there's worse transfers you could make. Yeah, he's staying. I don't think I'll be getting rid of him in these three. It just seems a little bit of a waste. If we've got him in for this run of fixtures that he's had, obviously he scored in his first three games. He hasn't scored since, but he has looked good as well. He has created chances. He's very much in that Robin mould of playing on the right, cutting inside on your left and whipping it across to the back stick. You know what he's going to do every time, but it's very difficult to stop it if you do it well. So he's definitely staying. You could make an argument for someone like Dalot. Their defensive record has been a little bit better in recent weeks, 2 clean sheets in their last 3. So potentially someone like that as well as Rashford, or someone of that ilk, if that's the way you're looking.
Maybe. They drew 1-1 with Chelsea, and honestly, Chelsea threw that away, and their fixtures are terrible. But United, I think, in the last dying embers of the game, looks quite good. So I'm probably not going to be bringing anyone in, but I don't know. It's not off the table yet. Chelsea, their next 3 before the World Cup are Brighton away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away. So I think they're a sell for this run. There's no one at Chelsea I think is worth having at the moment. So I just think they're an easy sell and get rid of. Any different opinions there?
Well, we've got Kepa in the joint team at the moment, so we'll be keeping him because he is cheap as well. We got him in at 4.3, I think. So that was very cheap. And they have looked a lot better defensively under Potter. It's worth saying that in general they have. The only thing is, what I will say, and give Potter huge credit in this game, for the first 25 to 30 minutes, Man United were all over them. Then he made the change, brought Cucurella off, brought Kovacic into the middle, changed the formation. And after that point, the game completely changed and turned on its head, and Chelsea had the better of it. Deservedly took the lead in the end with the penalty. And yeah, like you say, just threw it away at the end of it, really. But I think, and I actually watched quite a bit of the game last night against Salzburg in the early kickoff in the Champions League. The amount of chances they made and the football they played was very good. They opened them up lots of times. Ober should have scored at least 2 probably, but the Salzburg's keeper had a very good game. So I'm not bringing them in for this run, like you say, because those fixtures aren't the best, but I am looking at them post-World Cup as potential maybe. The only problem is, where are their consistent points coming from? I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're a hard avoid for me right now. Newcastle is another team we're both invested in. We both got Pope and we both got Trippier. The next 2 are Villa and Southampton, so I think they're a hold at the moment. I love Newcastle. I think their win at Spurs was really, really, really impressive. They look like a really solid team. Anything else worth saying on Newcastle, or do you want to speak about your love for Antonio Conte?
No, Newcastle, I just want to sing their praises a bit more. Eddie Howe was always a manager that was known as not being able to organise a team defensively, and now they have he has the team with the best defensive record in the league. They've conceded 10 goals so far this season, which is one less than Newcastle and Arsenal, one less than City and Arsenal. So you've got to give him huge credit. When he came into this role, sort of this time last year, I thought it was an appointment to get them through to the end of the season because I didn't see him as a long-term solution for a team with big money. But he's proven me wrong. He's proven a lot of people wrong because I don't think I was the only one with that mindset. And fair play to him. And one person I do want to speak about, and I don't know, is he worth looking at, is Miguel Almiron. He seems to be on fire at the moment. 5 goals in his last 5 games. Chuck an assist in there as well. Is he one that's worth looking at?
I think you're looking for points in Almiron places.
And that's all we've got time for this week. That is the end of the Big at the Bag podcast forever.
I think, unlike Iwobi, who I think is a terrible player, Almiron, you've always known he had it in him. You've always seen that potential. He's just never really fulfilled it. And it's really, really nice to be watching him fulfill it. My one concern is, when does Isak come back? Because that could mean Newcastle shift formation and he's less involved. So he's in a bit of form. He's doing really well. I worry about the consistency around it. And don't get me wrong, I love him. I think he's an awesome player. But it's with the return of when St. Max is fully back, when Isak's fully back, it's his long-term starting prospects. Maybe as a punt for the next couple, it's fine, but it's not someone I would want to wait to use a transfer on right now. That being said, if I had a wild card, I'd definitely be bringing him in.
Genuinely tempted to bring him in after next week for Pereira for those 2 weeks before the World Cup. Because Fulham play City and United in those 2 games. And Newcastle in that penultimate game play Southampton. They then go to Chelsea, which host Chelsea, which is a bit trickier. But I feel like for those 2 weeks, he would be a better punt than Andreas Pereira.
I agree, actually. Yeah, I think that's a very good move. I'd be interested to see how Newcastle line up against Chelsea in particular. Spurs then. Now, I've still got Harry Kane, and I will definitely be holding him for the Bournemouth game next. But then they've got Liverpool at home, which is, we don't know what that fixture is going to be like. Then Leeds at home. Again, that feels like an easy fixture. For me, I'm teetering on whether I sell Salah or Kane next week to fund my City players. So I think that's going to be decided this week. Where are you sitting with Spurs at the moment, apart from having Ben Davies?
Apart from having Ben Davies, I am sitting absolutely nowhere with Spurs. I feel like Kane is the one that if I was going to bring in, it would be the one to come in. It would be dropping Salah, upgrading Edouard, and then whoever comes in for Salah, which, I mean, is probably a decent move. But as I keep saying, my worry is this World Cup looming and players taking their foot off the pedal, wanting to avoid injuries. Very annoying in this game. I saw before the game, Sky Bet had boosted Harry Kane to score a header to 12-1. I thought, that's a good bet. And then I went on to something else instead. And of course, he stooped down at the back post to head in. Like, you prick. You couldn't have just tapped that in with your foot, could you? But yeah, I don't know. Like, Conte, the worry is people are turning on him now. They're not liking the play. They're not liking the style of football. His contract only runs till the end of this season as well. So what does the long-term future look like for Spurs beyond this season? It's hard to see him getting a new contract at the moment. And then obviously then they've got to go on a managerial hunt again. It's like short-term, Kane's the only one really, isn't he? Let's be honest. Unless like Kulusevski comes back from injury and hits the ground running again, because they're really, other than him, no one else is doing the business for him at the moment.
Kane, you've really been missing out on. I've had him at least since the wild card, I think, game week 7 or 8, and he's returned in every single week since then with a goal and 2 or 3 bonus points. He has been just the depth, because he's not someone you're going to captain when you've got Haaland in the side, right? Or I think I've captained him once. But the reality is you're paying all that money for that consistency, and he's constantly getting between 6 and 9 points week in, week out. And I think that has been the difference between us this season, in the same way that Heung-min Son was the difference last season. Kane has been the difference between you and I and our performance so far this season.
To be fair, just looking at these fixtures, the temptation is rising to do the hit this week with them going to Bournemouth, who obviously aren't the best defensively. They've been a bit better under Gary O'Neill in general.
Bournemouth are at home, where they're quite good.
Yeah, but just with that Kane consistency, like you say, I could go Salah out, Edouard up to Kane and bring in a different midfielder. That could even be Miguel Almiron.
Have you got Saka?
No, I haven't.
Can you afford to do Salah out, then Kane and Saka in? Because Arsenal are playing Nottingham Forest at home next, and I'm doubled up on Arsenal midfielders. I don't think Gabriel Jesus is really an option at the moment, but I think Saka and Martinelli, I think, are really, really strong picks for this week.
The answer to that is no, I cannot afford Saka.
Looks like I'll be picking up all the 2 points more than you will from Saka then.
But I can afford Almiron, who, when you look at the points, he is the second highest scoring midfielder in FPL this season.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. But I think Kane is a really, really strong option for these last three. 2 home games against Leeds and Liverpool and a away game against Bournemouth. I think that's Kane's going to get at least 3 goals in this run, probably more. So I think Kane's a really easy hold for me.
You know what, Tom? I'm going to wait for tonight's game because obviously they play in the Champions League tonight. If he gets through that unscathed, I'm doing it. You've convinced me. And now watch Salah rack up the points this weekend.
That's going to be fun, isn't it?
Well, you never know. Salah might get injured tonight. You never know. You go to Amsterdam tonight, don't you?
Yeah, going to play with Ajax in the Champions League. I guess we can talk about the West Ham game just on the basis of I know it's Leicester of the Law, and we spoke about it on WhatsApp, but I think West Ham, admittedly, you were owed one by VAR. I mean, you're owed about 3 by VAR, but you were owed one. But I think you're very lucky for that goal to have stood. It shouldn't, in my opinion, have stood. Now, we can discuss this, but Leicester of the Law is bullshit in this scenario because there's no way that is not a handball. I think if that's a defender, then that's a penalty. Thoughts?
I don't know if it is a penalty if it's a defender because the issue is his arms are in front of him. If his arms slightly out there,
moves his arms towards the ball,
which we saw with the penalty that West Ham were given. If your arms away from the body, they count it as an unnatural position. We can debate the handball law all day. It's so much. They tried to make it black and white, which didn't work with VAR. So they tried to make it a little bit more grey, and we're still having these issues. So as long as you've got VAR in the game and handball, like there's going to be these contentious issues. The worst thing about it from a Bournemouth perspective, and I completely understand why they feel aggrieved by it, is if that ball bounced up off his arm straight to Zuma, who headed it in, it's disallowed. But because it bounces up, it's headed away, and then it's nodded back in by Souček, and Zuma gets on the end of it. Because that then counts as a second phase of play, that's why it's allowed. It's really harsh on them. Don't get me wrong. I do think it is very harsh on them. That's and
then you get a penalty for handball, salt in the wounds.
Yeah, it really does. And the thing is, I don't think anyone's arguing with that one. Even the defender, when he got up, just sort of went, ugh. Like you know it's coming because if I was going to look at it, and you know it's going to be given. What I will say, Kurt Zuma, top scoring player this week. Go on, lad.
Go on, Zuma. I mean,
15 big points. He's going to be kicking cats all over the place to celebrate.
Yeah, I brought Kayra in a few weeks ago instead of Zuma. Trying to be clever, getting a win back. But, 6 points and I'm happy with him.
And it's a clean sheet.
Yeah. Let's look at how we did this week then. Talk me through where you feel your team did well this week and where you feel like a little frustrated. Obviously, Andrea's first sub isn't great.
Yeah, that was not ideal. Ward in goal with a last minute bringing in for Pope to get me 8 points. Yeah, thank you very much for that one. No points across the back 3. Davis 1, Trippier 2, Cancelo 2. Midfield of 1s and 2s as well, which was very disappointing. Haaland captain with 26, 2 for Edouard, 6 for Mitrovic, giving me a total for the week of 53, which is just above average, but not enough for any green arrows. So, yeah, just sitting at almost exactly 1.4 million in the world.
Strong. Yeah, I'm done a bit better this week. So 73 points up to 339,000 in the world. reasonable week. I think I'm doing quite well now. It feels like a week where I pulled back and a bit closer to the leading pack because so many people have bad weeks. Yeah, having Ward in goal instead of Pope for this 1 week, I'm just going to take the points and run with it, to be honest, because
I think keep Ward in goal this week.
That's going to be awful. I mean, he might get a million saves for all we know. But yeah, then as I mentioned, Keira, my only defender with the clean sheets, but Andreas in the midfield and Haaland, Mitro, and Kane up front, all returning. Harry Kane with 8 points after the 6 points last week, 9 points the week before, etc., etc. He's just continuously driving my rank up and driving green arrows. So very happy to be holding him at the moment. Bailey third sub is a bit annoying with 13 points, but I was never going to start Leon Bailey this week. So I'm not too bothered about that. What's your team looking like for next week then? You mentioned you're looking to probably bring in Harry Kane.
Yeah, so as it stands, before the Champions League games this evening, it would be Pope in goal, a back three of Davis, Trippier, and Cancelo. A midfield four of Martinelli, Anthony, Foden, and Salah, which would probably become a midfield five with Pereira over Edouard, potentially. And then that would leave me with Haaland and Mitrovic up front. The caveat with that being, depending on how tonight's games go, it could be Salah out, Malmaron in, Edouard out, Kane in which case I think Pereira would probably then be remaining on the bench because I'm not dropping anyone else over him. Because I think Almiron's a better shout, Foden's a better shout. I have to have Anthony in my team because if he does score against West Ham and I have him on the bench, it's fine. Right. If he blanks, you know what? I don't care that much. And Martinelli against Forest obviously isn't going anywhere. So it's one of those ones. It will probably come back to bite me in the arse. But like I say, Everton's defensive record at the moment is very good. So that's my way of justifying it to myself and not hating myself if it doesn't come off. What about you? How are you going into this week?
So I think I'm going to roll the transfer on the basis that next week I can use it to go Salah and Mitchell to Cancelo and Foden. I'm not certain Foden's going to start this week. Otherwise, I would think about the -4, but also Salah versus Leeds. I'm quite happy with my 11 this week. So Pope in goal, Mitchell, Trippier, and Robertson at the back, 3 home fixtures. Then in the middle, 4 home fixtures as well. So Andreas, Martinelli, Salah, and Saka. And then up top is Haaland, captain, Mitro, and Kane. Benches, Johnny, Keira, then Bailey. So, yeah, and Ward, obviously. I'm pretty happy with that. Most of my players are at home this week, and the only ones that are away are Kane against Bournemouth and Haaland against Leicester. Home teams seem to be doing much, much better this year than they have done in previous years. So, yeah, I think I'm well set, assuming there's no injuries tonight. If there are, I might have to change a couple of things around, but ideally, I'd like to roll the transfer if at all possible. So that's where I am at the moment. I think it could be quite a good week. It's one I feel like I could do quite well in, assuming Fulham, Everton, and Arsenal Forest goes my way.
Sounds good. I feel like, yeah, it's annoying because I keep going into weeks thinking, I'm looking pretty good for this week, and I just keep like being bang average. I'm like almost on or just like within 5 points of the average every week.
I think at the moment, though, there is starting to be quite a bit of variance compared to the first couple of weeks of the season when everyone had the same team. But by and large, everyone's got Trippier. Loads of people have Pope. Loads of people have Cancelo. Everyone's got Martinelli. There's at least 7 or 8 players that everyone has. So the variance, while it's there, it's not huge at the moment. So it's almost feeling like a case of let's all get to the World Cup. And after that point, I expect teams will start looking a bit different again.
It's going to be difficult as well because there's not much time between that World Cup final and the league restarting. So especially if any players have got to that final, they're probably not going to be coming back in early doors. So you've got like and it's the festive period, so it's football. There's so many games when you come back, so it's going to be really hard to balance your teams with the players that you really want and who you think is going to be getting the most minutes if they've gone deep in the tournament. It's something obviously we've never had in FPL before, but it could really start to thin out the pack because it could really come back to bite people.
Well, it's like, will Trippier be good after the World Cup if he's playing for England every single week? I'm not sure. We don't know. So it's all a bit. There's a lot of question marks, and I'm really looking forward to it. I love the chaos. Last year with COVID causing chaos, this year with the World Cup, feels like there's always going to be something in FPL that's causing absolute carnage for the player base. I, for one, am really looking forward to it.
It makes it interesting, doesn't it? And another thing, obviously, during the World Cup, we've got World Cup fantasy to worry about. I'm sure we'll be getting on and involved in that.
I mean, I will, but the amount of attention I give it will be minimal.
Well, if we're doing a podcast about it, I'm sure you'll be able to focus on it a little bit more. What I do like about the World Cups and the Euro fantasies is, especially with the Euro fantasy last year, you can make changes to your 11 after each day. So it's a bit like some people say in FPL, you should be able to make changes, say, after the Saturday, bring in players that haven't played necessarily with the Sunday fixture still to go. It's a bit like how fantasy works with American sports. You can make changes up until basically kickoff time.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how it's set out, but I'm sure we will be playing it. And we'll be doing loads of podcasts around England and stuff anyway. I think next week or the week after, we'll be looking to do who we think should be in the England squad as well. So
Curtis Jones.
No, Harvey Elliott, though. I'd take Elliott over Mount any day of the week. But we'll get to that next week or the week after. Until then, everyone, have a great week this week, and we'll speak to you next week. You can find us on Twitter. Come chat to us at Big at the Back.
Yep, you can find me at Higgins92 and Tom is at TomMadden92. And I'd just like to give a quick mention to our friends over at the North East South podcast who have just got back up and running again for this season. So if you haven't already, go and check them out. They're a couple of great lads and it will be a good laugh and well worth a bit of your time.
I liked their first podcast back as well, of the wager of a chocolate bar and the argument over whether the White Lion bar was good or not. Got a lot of time for that. For context, I hate White Lion bars, but if Southern likes it, maybe we should pay attention.
I've never had one, so maybe I'll have to go and buy one.
They're just so sickly.
Just like you.
Have a great week, everyone, and we'll look forward to catching up next week.